I will wrap up a few outstanding pieces that I'd like to get across to you as some of the foundational ideas, and then we will wrap up the day, and then we'll let you go around about 3 o'clock.
Please complete that and give it to me.
Oh, that's the evaluation form for the day.
For the day.
Great. Okay. Well, you could wait a few more minutes before you complete it, but that's up to you. Okay. I'm all in favour of efficiency, but that's no, that's great. So we definitely want from you today, before you leave, both your self-assessment, which we've got a bunch here on the tables, so you can leave them on the tables, and an evaluation form for today. Sorry, it's all been a bit chaotic, but I think you understand some of the reasons. So I just wanted to say one thing, which is this: if you find this over complex, or intimidating, or badly explained, I felt as though I really want you to understand this, and therefore I sometimes work too hard and it becomes too difficult. But keep exploring. I will send round, if you can remind me, especially Paul, a couple of videos of other people than me explaining this, if you're interested in following up. You might see, though, that there's a connection between this with the environment, the service, the management and the future, and this with citizen world, services, management and leadership, and thinking and planning for the future. So there's a deliberate interplay of the two. The 5 worlds model, which we've been going through today, actually follows the same basic structure, that you've got to think about these 5 bits of the system and how they interact together if you're going to be an effective system leader, and all good commissioners who are actually taking the real responsibility for the outcomes of the work they do, not just saying, well, I did my part and I ticked my box and it's a shame that the world went to hell in a handbasket, but it wasn't my fault. Have to think about that kind of whole system picture at the level of the system they're working in at a minimum. So hopefully you can see the connection between this and the 5 worlds model. So we wanted to get a real practical example, and somewhat reluctantly, but with my great thanks, Simon has volunteered, and Simon has got a commissioning challenge. He described as small, only £6 million or so. That is to do with roads, but I'll let him speak in his own words. The plan will be, Simon will describe his commissioning challenge. I think it's about 3 to 5 minutes or so. I'll give you 3 minutes on tables to come up with good questions. Then we'll have a quick fire Q&A, so you can get any more context or explanation, and then we'll give you 10 minutes or so to come up with insights, thoughts, perspectives from your understanding of commissioning and from your points of view on how that commissioning challenge could be approached. And we won't ask Simon to evaluate those. We'll just do our best to capture them all so that he can reflect on them afterwards. Is that okay?
Questions for you, not for me.
Well, I know there'll be some questions for you about your context and the realities of what your market and all that kind of stuff is. Is that okay? So can I invite you to come up here and talk? If you don't mind, since we're video recording, I will give you the microphone too, just to give you the full experience. So if I can just click that on your rather nice tie, you can put that in the pocket or anywhere. Okay. The floor is yours.
Can I use the flip chart materials?
Yep.
Might be a little bit easier. So I'm only as of tomorrow in a post that's going to be doing outcomes-based commissioning formally. For about the past 12 months almost, I've been doing some of this stuff on an interim basis, but my background is real. I'm a civil engineer. I've been commissioning sort of specialist professional services, consultancies that do design works and contract management works for basically construction projects. I spent a bit of time managing a design consultancy, an in-house design consultancy in the council that was very commercial. We had no budget, so we just had an income target, so we had to charge our staff out at cost and stuff like that. So that's my background. The particular challenge that Benjamin's asked me to talk about is because, as I say, over the last 12 months or so, I've been to a few of these events and started to get an idea about this outcomes-based commissioning idea and what's involved with it. And it's trying to link that to the traditional input-based, specification-driven, we know best, this is how we fix our roads kind of approach, really. So the issue we've got now is that we've had a single provider situation. We commissioned single provider in Wirral Council for the past 9 years, 2 different providers. The one we've got now, the contract will end in September. So as of 1st of October, we need to provide an alternative delivery model. Only in January we took the decision of how to do that, and that's kind of internalisation. So it's a little bit different, but it is still commissioning because the internalisation and the internal model is based around having only a very small internal direct supply team. The rest will be, rather than a single provider, will be multiple providers that we were commissioned to. So I'll just show you what so at the moment we've got sort of one single provider. That's going. We're going to have, in terms of the structure, you know, you've got probably 4 or 5. I don't know which in the service model it is, but it's the council itself. And then we've got two arms or hubs of the council really that are going to be managing these services and these contracts. One is where I'm going to be based, Commissioning Services Unit, which has been set up for just over a year, and my new boss heads that up. And the other is delivery. So we have a delivery services arm of the council that does things direct and provides services direct. So under that, there'll be sort of reactive and routine, I'll call it. So your day-to-day repairs of the highway. So potholes need fixing, street lights need fixing, emergencies, call-outs. Probably 20%. So there's, out of this whole service, it's something like 6 million a year that this single provider turns over. So that's the service budget, and that will probably be constant. This is probably 20% of it, and this is 80% of it. And this is basically multiple providers. So they might be doing road surfacing, planned works really, so planned improvements. So I suppose that the question is, how do we engage and involve these people, these service providers, and how do we engage and involve the service users, which is the public at the end of the day, in designing the services that we're going to put out, to make sure they're outcomes based, you know, to make sure that they deliver outcomes for the public.
So this is quite a radical reshaping of the commissioning system, which is kind of a market shaping change.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 questions to get us started, which might come to the same thing. First is the obvious question is, why have you made this decision?
Yeah.
And the second is, how does this relate to wanting to meet citizen outcomes rather than kind of technical road-related outcomes, if that makes sense?
Well, the reason it's being done, and the first thing that I suppose, outcome that it's meeting is value for money. So when we had a single provider, these people were working for that provider, but the provider was working for us and adding on his overhead.
Right.
So we think we can do it better ourselves, more cost effectively ourselves. But I struggle with the concept of, we didn't think we were getting value, sufficient value. If this provider was turning over 6 million a year and we were getting a lot of added value out of it, I think we'd carry on with that model. But we didn't feel we were getting the added value that.
So you're actually
that having a big contractor, you know, with all his associated overheads, wasn't bringing that added value. So
you're going to be spending the same amount, you're going to be cutting out the intermediary, hopefully. Yeah. And talk to us about the challenge of citizen-related outcomes in road services.
So when the contract was let with this provider and the one before that, it would have been a specification where we would have said, you know, this is the material you use to do this type of repair. We want you to do this particular task order type within 10 days of issue or whatever. There'd have been nothing about the highway needs to be kept to a certain standard, or customers need to be engaged with, and there needs to be responses within certain times or anything like that. Obviously we have our own customer relationship management system, we have our own customer service standards in terms of responses, but that, because of the nature of the way this was set up, is very intensive, very reactive now. We're inundated with complaints, when in actual fact, not necessarily because of this, the way this was set up, but just because of a function of the way we've, I suppose, managed our resources and revenue resources and capital resources in terms of funding. We've got a relatively good highway network in condition terms, which we can demonstrate by, you know, the indicators that are used for that nationally, that the government collects statistics on. We do well. You know, it's a percentage of your roads that need major maintenance in the next 6 years or whatever it is, and ours are good. You know, ours are low. But the perception from the public is it's not a good service from this provider, because we have to wait to have our street lights repaired, or we have to wait to have our potholes fixed.
And can I mention the bigger context thing that's overhanging this picture, the Liverpool City Region thing?
Yeah. So I think that out of that 6 million, again, probably this is a fair split between revenue budget and capital budget. So this capital budget there is a little bit of a risk going forward about the sufficiency of that. It's linked to two things. One is within highway management generally, there's a self-assessment process to go through to demonstrate that you do things in the right way, in the way that the government expect you to do things, and that'll affect your funding within your devolved budgets. And our budgets are devolved to a city region now, so we've got, you know, for the past 12 months we've got a Metro Mayor, Liverpool City Region, combined authority, controls the budgets and divvies it out on a formula at the moment to the constituent authorities, but that will be influenced by how well we answer this self-assessment questionnaire in terms of the way we perform. And some of that is how you engage and how you use the public to help design your services. So there is a little bit of that in there, but I don't think it's enough to meet all the sort of stuff we're talking about today.
Great. But the ultimate threat is that at some stage some of that money could be taken away to help other areas in the Liverpool City Region which might have a worse overall condition.
There is a risk, and that's why this model is something that we think we can deal with in the sort of interim medium term, rather than it be a long term. These contracts that we place with these people and this internal service could be just a 2-year model. It might not be a long term thing, but then of course if it works, there's other commercial opportunities the council's looking at. We could look at setting up a local authority controlled company and delivering this as a company for the council, pay the council back dividends if we went on the profits. So.
Well. Great. Do you want a couple of minutes on the table to check any questions, or do you want to fire questions at Simon?
I know this is a lot different, because the only reason I think I've been asked to do this is because it's radically different to all the health and social care sort of practitioners that we have here. So
that's exactly why I've asked you to do this, Simon, and thank you for volunteering. But I think there are some commonalities, and this is a commissioning challenge in exactly the same way, so thanks. Do people want to ask questions now to get more data, or have a quick chat and then ask questions from the tables? Questions now? Yeah, we have one back here.
I was just, I think you mentioned the global city, and you touched on it at the end in terms of where there's other priorities for money, but I wondered how much what you're planning to do is influenced by that, by austerity and by the fact that other priorities might mean the money goes somewhere else, and the need to demonstrate that the roads network is actually crucial to the health and well-being of the city, full stop. You know, it's part and parcel of the same. If we think about people's outcomes, it helps almost to protect you from the health and social care nightmare and money.
It does, and of course the quality of the road network is integral to the economy and the prosperity and everything to do with the local area. But I don't think it's a big issue that we will, and if we do lose out to Liverpool or whoever else has a greater need based on the current condition of their network, I don't think this will come down massively. But it is a factor insofar as your question, it's probably only a factor in the term the term of this model, how long we let these contracts for, rather than the actual type of
Although what's
service.
interesting is I've seen a lot of authorities in a similar position deliberately enter into a much longer, much more hidebound contract with a provider to lock that money away for themselves and for this service, if you see what I mean. So this is much more open from that point of view. But I think you might also turn your question into some advice and ideas about demonstrating the value later. So,
Yeah.
sorry. Anne.
Yeah, I'm just interested in kind of how you plan to manage the internal aspect of the service in terms of commissioning for outcomes and assurance.
This part of it, you mean?
Yeah, because obviously
Yeah.
that will then link
Yeah.
obviously to what happens here and how you will let that.
Yeah, and that's really important, because I think this, even though this forms 80% of the spend, it's less visible than this in terms of what the public perception is and what the public wants. Say they want the instant repairs. If they phone up and say, "My light's out," it's not acceptable to them for it to be out for 12 months because we don't see it's a high priority, or it's got lost in the system somewhere, or this contractor, this provider's, you know, not value for money, so we don't give them that type of repair because we can't afford it. You know, this is the crux of it, and a lot depends on, we don't really know who's going to manage this, because these people are going to be cheaping over from this provider. So how many of their managers come over is uncertain, so there's a lot of risks around that at the moment, and knowing how to set up a structure to manage this, knowing that it's a fairly small budget.
So we'll open that for advice when we come into we'll get you into the groups in a minute, chat, and then give quick fire advice, which we'll capture, and then we'll let you think over later. We've got 3 questions on this table, I think.
You were talking about the feedback you were getting from the public about the shortcomings of the single provider. And have you got a way of analysing that, breaking it down and finding out from there what's important? Is that going to be your only source of public engagement, or are you going to do something more proactive in terms of going forward? And have you got a context to think about how some of those complaints sit? So if you know, is there a kind of public safety angle to streetlights being out rather than a technical one? Is that important? And so you have that kind of wider ramification of kind of context in which you can sit individual complaints.
Going back to your first question, we do have contract KPIs with these people. One of them is customer satisfaction, so after they've done a scheme, say in a street, so where you can target the particular recipients of that service, we do that. We probably don't do that enough or very well, but that's not, I don't think, what needs to inform this. It's more, rather than saying, right, they've been in and out of your street, was it good for you, you know, did they cause a disturbance, were you inconvenienced? That's not really finding out what outcomes are important. I suppose it is to a degree, but it's more understanding what engagement we need to do to make sure we get these contracts written properly, so that they're delivering outcomes rather than just we say what they do and we just check that they're doing it. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next one. I've captured some suggestions for questions or improvements that were inherent in that, I think.
What are the player outcomes for the services that you do with the roads, and what are resident outcomes for growth of the council?
So we've got a plan. We've got a council-wide Wirral plan called 2020 Vision. So by 2020 we've delivered on these pledges. So there's pledges to provide a safe environment. So obviously it links to that. And there's a pledge. So there's 2 main ones that cover this sort of area. The other one is transport and technology, infrastructure systems fit for the future. Well, they're the broad overview pledges that the council is committed to. So it's what the public see, I think, is their perception of a good outcome for highway, because effectively it is just highway maintenance. It's just maintaining a safe and efficient highway network. We're not necessarily talking about major infrastructure projects that deliver developments and benefits, that would sit out. We would manage them from this unit, but they're not this £6 million a year turnover. There's much bigger projects than that. I mean, we're managing projects for an £8 million bridge replacement at the moment that'll help the development areas and the economy locally, but that's a separate thing. This is more just the day-to-day.
I think that they might have quite a lot to say around what they perceive as fit for the future though.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to, I agree on, let's move us on to the next one. I think there'll be more suggestions and ideas coming from that line of inquiry.
So in respect, you're talking particularly about how to engage your suppliers underneath the CSU.
Yeah, we've kind of started that process. What we've done is we've gone to this current provider that's, let's say, in contract with us till September anyway. We've gone to them and asked who their supply chain is, and we started to engage with their first tier supply chain. So we had an event last week where we presented basically a PowerPoint presentation with what the thinking behind this was, what the reasoning behind this was, and then a sort of slide that in a bit more detail than this shows what the structure is of the contracts, and asked them how they felt about basically contracting direct with the council rather than with a main contractor. And generally that was very positive, but we need to widen that out.
What is your inspiration for opening that up? I mean, you can go, sorry, I am a procurement person, I should put my hands up, you can also tell me later. So, but how are you going to invite the wider market?
So our procurement team sits in here as well, so they're my colleagues as well. So what we've started that process. So we're going through a process of, and this is why I pose that as a question as well. We kind of think we know the answer to that, but it'd just be interesting to see what other people do in other areas. But in procurement terms, what we're going to do is we're going to look at these contracts, look at the categories, and then basically advertise within those categories, search within those categories on Construction Line and procurement portals to see who's doing that type of work in the geographical area that we sit in, and to see whether, and then to invite them to another event where we can ask them whether they'd be interested in contracting and seeing what the market appetite is.
Okay. Just add into that, just one more thing, and that's put it in, social value. It's not applicable in works.
Yeah.
You're going to use it in this?
Yeah, we've just the council's just published its social value policy, so that's normally, we use that as part of the PQQ stage. So, you know, what you're going to do for social value, it's really important to us, and it gets them to the ITT stage, but I think it's more important for this to get them to recognise that.
The voice of the public will come into social value.
Yeah.
So that's why we provide your link.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And final question?
I'm just interested in the relationship between the CSU and the delivery structure, because it's a quite generic thing, isn't it? About organisations that have got into almost.
We need an SLA there as well internally, so that because they're still a contractor, or this is still a contractor, same as these are. We will be managing these direct from this unit, but on behalf of our strategic commissioner who sits there, you know, we still have to make sure that this service is right. And even though it's being delivered by the direct services or delivery services arm of the council, I think on behalf of the commissioner we'll need to have an internal agreement. And I've been to a few sessions on internalisation, because it's the way things are going with the Carillion crash and things like that. You know, it's a lot of public services actually being brought in now instead of commissioned out, and I think that's a really strong thing, is that people are saying it's all right setting up an internal provider, but you still need to treat them like you would an external provider and have a proper contract where you're clear on what your expectations are. So again, even there, you know, what they deliver needs to be outcome based as well, I think, for the public.
One final question.
I guess, so the providers you intend to or would like to contract with, I guess it's whether they are ready to be commissioned through outcomes, because, you know, we might be ready to do that, but actually are they as providers in a place to be able to deliver that? And that,
I think that is the problem, because especially considering the size of the budget and the scale of all this, these contractors that do this work, that they're not big players. You know, this was a big player in the national picture. I won't name them, but these are small, in some cases SMEs. You know, and we don't really want to bog them down with specifications which aren't meaningful. So we want to design these contracts so that these people understand what we expect them to do, but we understand that what they do does deliver the outcome, you know, and how we measure that, I suppose.
Thank you very much. And some of the questions have turned into advice and they've got insights in them, which is interesting. So I'm just going to give you maybe about 3 minutes to just brainstorm on tables, and then I'll capture all the bits of queries, or look out for this, or perhaps you could do this, or you know, have you thought about this? Just to demonstrate how we can apply the commissioning thinking to this very different challenge. Is that okay? So about 3 minutes to brainstorm things that you'd like to input, things that you'd suggest, things that you'd say look out for.
I think it's for me anyway, for what I would need out of it, it's I think what you were saying, we do understand a little bit about how we need to engage the market, but I don't anyway know how the best way of engaging the users at the end of the day to get them to input into the outcomes. Yeah.
Great,
Simon,
thank you
just set
very much.
the bullets to the one side so we can see the screen as well.
Is that all right?
Brilliant, thank
Do you want this?
Suggestions, hints, warnings and the like from around the room. Does anybody want to kick us off with something that you came up that you think Simon should be taking notice of?
We had some discussion around the existing contract really, because when you say that the contractor will go in September because there was value for money issues, that should be you can get better value for the 6 million different providers. We didn't know how much of that was negotiated in the existing contractor. The contract's been there for some years really, so how's all that work been exhausted in the sense of so if you didn't have concerns around safety or quality, it was about the cash. Did the cash then not be negotiated in relation to on costs or whatever? So that was one of the issues that we raised in the meeting.
Basically, it was a 4-year contract, that's extendable by 2 years, in 4 6-month chunks based on performance in the first 4 years. So they were offered a 12-month extension because they hit the KPI for years 1 and 2. But only chose to take one of those 2 6-month extensions. So clearly, although we don't think it's good value for those days, we think it's good value. So they're margin.
That's helpful actually. Yeah. And the other thing was around co-production in relation to where's the evidence around how you engage with the community. It might be around offering choices, for example, do you want your potholes filled? Do you want to spend on speed reduction measures? Do you want issues in relation to disability, drop curves, really? So do you want pedestrianised areas, that sort of thing really? So how do we make roads sexy and tangible? Public really, so in relation to choices.
They're definitely not sexy, but they're high on the priority list, I know that. But we do obviously do customer engagement. Part of the requirements that we do that, and there is a national survey for this sort of data. But when I've looked at it and tried to use that as a data, it's so subjective, because the difference between whether somebody thinks that the priority is stable transport cycleways, or whether it's having street lights quickly or potholes quickly. There's so marginal, when you talk about the differences, and that's the difficulty, because using that type of very generalistic survey is difficult. I think we probably need more direct engagement with people to feed into the production of the specification.
Is that what you could do a model in terms of like taking 100 people, and if you can understand what the needs are of kind of one set of people really clearly, then maybe I guess more in terms of them bigger than then you can extrapolate actually. Because it feels like it's not enough information about what people's demand is, or what I guess the needs behind the demand is, to kind of know how to get outcomes.
How you might engage community leaders, not every man and his dog. So the community leaders are probably natural assets out there that have much more awareness and maybe able to tap into much more of the groups about what's pertinent in particular areas. And we didn't know whether there could be different ways of giving better data, or better intelligence maybe.
In Cambridgeshire, the county council piggybacked on the back of regular meetings that the police had in the different parish council areas. So that kind of linked into some of the local leaders, but it was a public meeting. But my understanding is that most of the conversation was about potholes or traffic calming, and was less about the general state of the highway. It was quite particular, and you will always get the people that turn up to those sorts of public meetings. But that was a way of engaging and using someone else's infrastructure, if you like, because they were running those meetings anyway, to get out and begin to engage.
And that's the problem. The big issue we have at the moment in terms of generating a lot of complaints and inquiries is street lighting. That's even more so than that. And that's purely a function of the fact that we've not invested well in our infrastructure. But we've got a 3-year programme with big capital investment right now for the next 3 years on lighting infrastructure. We're trying to communicate the message in 4 years' time. Things going to be a lot better than until it until then. Then our city council need to find out what is a reasonable, response to a lighting complaint or.
Because people don't feel safe then, do they? So actually, how else can it be made to feel safe?
We had a discussion about the behaviours of the contractors. So there's a risk, isn't there, that the overhead that you're seeking to release from the single provider is swallowed up in your partly your internal management arrangements, and secondly that presumably
we're not going to do the status video.
Bonder and under contractors, where previously most of the contractors of the single provider. The single provider will spend a fair amount of time managing their quality and assurance, and those contractors will spend a fair amount of time trying to get away with it. And so you're going to end up
do that
taking all that responsibility. That's kind of lost your overhead there. So there seems to be something about making sure prior to the appointment, as the transition comes in, that people are arriving with the contractors responding to the CSU and indeed the delivery arm have got the right spirit, that it's not a reductive chase to the bottom of the cost of filling potholes and street lighting and doing schemes. It's actually about genuine understanding and commitment of the quality of the service expected. So you can start releasing that dividend of performance managing a contractor because you've got trust that the contractor will do the right thing. Of course, there's a quality assurance process, but you're at risk of creating a more complicated system. You're going to have to manage ever more tightly.
Well, and that's the.
You've got multiple, that's the point. Yeah, you're right. You've got more
and the only way you can resolve that is by the set of behaviours and attitudes that those subcontractors come in with.
Well, but you're going to inherit the culture, aren't you?
Yeah.
And all the people. That's the point. Yeah.
The culture you're trying to get rid of.
And that's only.
We've had a discussion about sheep dipping.
Yeah.
All of those staff in the behaviour, the expectations, the attitude that you'd expect to be if you're going to be a contractor, and in return you'll pay a fair price.
Well, I mean, this raises the big point that the knee-jerk reaction to Carillion and the like is insourcing, but it doesn't actually solve any of the problems. It doesn't solve your problem of contestability and creating value for money. And we'll circulate the Gary Sturgis videos, which are very good on this. And there's actually a case study about New South Wales roads, which is quite good for anybody to look at, because it's a case study about how do you maintain assets and how do you generate competition or competition-like conditions to keep people honest and good value when you're going to a big provider, but it's the same if you bring things in-house. So just bringing things in-house won't change anything, but you're obviously alert to all of the issues around that. So thanks very much. I think it's a great case study, and I really am pleased. From my point of view, I think it's nailed the point. If any of us were in any doubt, this could be about residential care, it could be about home care, it could be anything, and all the challenges of commissioning are not all exactly the same, but broadly it's the same picture and the same issue. Did you want to comment?
Change that a bit, because I think particularly the delivery of the reactive stuff, that seems to me a question. Is that commissioning, is that politics? Because I would think, 2 days or whatever, who's going in the next direction is.
Yep.
You know, because actually,
Yeah.
so there's that
Yeah. But giving the people what they want is always close to pandering for votes, isn't it?
People
But
spend that money with politicians to look
yeah.
at the council.
But again, that comes into other areas of commissioning too, believe it or not. Yeah, I mean, there's a thin line between politics and commissioning a lot of the time, I would say.
One of the things that I was trying to kind of work out was where's the incentive for the providers
Yes.
in terms of
Yeah.
meeting outcomes. And it struck me that there's a bit of a dichotomy here because if the way to avoid a pothole is a more responsive and a better timetable to maintain the overall surface of the road, and that sits with the outsourced providers.
That's a good point, yeah.
Are you going to say that if you can reduce the number of potholes that the delivery vehicle has got to do over a 12-month period,
Yeah.
you can have 10% of the cost or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
some kind of deal? Because I can't see at the moment where that incentive...
Well, and that is where popularity and good service can potentially conflict.
Yeah.
The best way to generate customer loyalty for a high-value car brand is to make sure that after somebody buys the car, something fairly minor goes wrong and they get an amazing service in the dealership fixing it. Now, that's not really what we're all about in public services, but if you want to win an election, and if you go around and smash out all of the street lights outside all of the marginal ward bedroom windows, and then you fix them within 2 hours, that would go down quite well, wouldn't it? Yeah. More potholes that are fixed quickly would be more expensive and a worse overall sort of public benefit than really good underlying road resurfacing on a rolling basis that leaves a few potholes but stops most of them from forming in the first place. So I mean, I think we'll have to leave us with that slight dilemma as we wrap up today.
So I'm going to challenge a bit. There's something you said about bringing services in-house. It doesn't solve anything.
Yes.
Can you say it doesn't necessarily solve anything, but it does bring you a new set of levers. So for our council, we've taken
Potentially, yes.
We've taken those
Yep.
back
Yep.
because the culture
Yeah.
is so strong.
Yes.
The picture here, it's the stories, the rituals, routines, the sense, the belief.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Actually, it's been completely transformational.
Yeah,
It's not
good,
been
yeah.
dependent on any internal contracting arrangements. It's just that if senior management that come in don't buy in to the behaviour, the deal, the expectations,
Yeah.
they're invited to pursue their career elsewhere.
Yes. I would challenge. Yeah.
A strong culture that's about doing the right thing.
That's great. I would challenge back, and I would say, if you get your commissioning and procurement right, there's no reason you can't have the same influence on the culture of an outsourced provider. In theory.
No.
In practice, I realise that's sometimes quite difficult.
Yeah. Necessarily.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily change anything.
No, I understand your point. Of course, it can generate different levers and different behaviours, and sometimes it can make things worse. Right? I remember DSO 3 in Hammersmith and Fulham in 2001 or something, and they've been protected through all of those arrangements. So there was a whole history, as there always is, to culture and all the rest. But it wasn't a brilliant, snappy, responsive service that was winning elections. It was quite the opposite. So yeah. So that's the problem. It's all contextual. So as commissioners, you've got to realise that context is king. You've got to do the right thing that works in the context that you're operating in, which is another reason why a recipe can't be picked up and used somewhere else. But I think this shows exactly the type of commissioning thinking in context that we need to be getting into. So thanks very much, Simon. Appreciate it.